I'm extremely excited to introduce Dr. Simon Khoury again this evening. Simon did a wonderful presentation last night, and we're doing a similar topic tonight on skin cancer. I learnt a lot last night, which was great. I'm also booked into to get my skin checked tomorrow, as it so happens. But I would really appreciate Simon once again for doing another talk. So he's the other half of the powerhouse of the Simon and Sophie team. I've met Simon on a couple of occasions at conferences because we do share some of the similar medications, and we've had a few get-togethers over the years to talk about those medications. But Dr. Simon is a graduate of the Australian National University and Fellow of the Australasian College of Dermatologists. He's a published author in several academic journals and a member of the staff at Flinders Medical Centre, Department of Dermatology. He's a partner at Dermatology SA and enjoys looking after various patients who see him at Mount Barker and southern suburbs. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Alex. It's happy to be here. Can I just say how amazing these food platters are? Hats off, I think. Did you make the food platters? They are stunning. I mean, frankly, they're better than what I have already. And the camembert cheese, no one's eating it. Like, that's stunning. You should be eating it. Alice, is that okay to run the mine? Perfect. There is some processed things. Is that okay?
That's okay.
Ah, good. So, as you know, I'm Simon. I'm a dermatologist from Adelaide. Dermatologists tend to deal with more complicated skin cancer. So your GPs will do most of it. I tend to see kind of stuff that's a bit hard to fix. But I'm not going to focus on the hard stuff too much. I'm going to focus on the common stuff. Skin cancer affects us all. No one is exempt from it. And will it happen to you? Almost certainly. It's about 70% of Australians will get skin cancer. And dare I say, I think as a population here, you probably spend a lot more time in the sun than perhaps others that live closer to suburbia. So to be specific, 2 in 3 will get skin cancer. And if you think about 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, there's a lot of people here that get skin cancer. And some of that will surgery, some of that will require radiotherapy. The goal of the game is to catch things before you actually need any of that kind of stuff. And we're very fortunate that there are some prominent people now that are actually coming out and talking about it. I remember like 10 years ago, it really wasn't something you'd hear about in the public domain. But now you've got like Hugh Jackman, Sutton, are actually making a bit of a show about it, which I'm grateful for, because you should know about it. It's not a pleasant thing to think about, but the more we are aware of it, the more we're likely to take action. So the question is, I guess, how does it all start? A lot of people think that skin cancer is like an all or nothing thing. You've got beautiful skin, and then you've got cancer. And nothing is like that. Bowel cancer is not like that. No cancer is like that. There's lots of little baby steps, if you like. It's a continual change. And it often starts off with these things called solar keratoses, sometimes known as sunspots. Solar means sun. And they come in all sorts of different forms. These are kind of more obvious versions of it. But I'm sure you've got grandmothers, grandfathers, even yourself might have those little crusty spots on the back of your hand. Those little spots possibly on the sides of your face. I mean, blokes that are bald, I think they have a lot on their head. Definitely the sun exposed areas, even sometimes the chest. I think for women, because that's the nature of female fashion, the sun gets a lot to your chest, and you'll sometimes feel these little crusty spots in your chest. These are these solid keratoses. In themselves, they're not cancer. They're not a problem yet in themselves, but they are the steps towards a problem. Sometimes they're quite subtle. They're not always that obvious. And often you just feel the side of your face, it's just a little bit rough. And you'll think, it's a bit of rash, or I'm a bit dry, I need some moisturiser. It's just a bit of sun damage. But this is how it starts. And then it progresses. The analogy I often use, it's kind of a rough one, is that solar keratoses are a lot like specks of rust, or specks of rot on a piece of wood or something like that. It starts off small, you could ignore it, but just know that if you give it time, it's going to end up being something more like this. So my point being is that use these as an opportunity to realise, okay, my skin is changing, I probably should start seeking some attention for it. Because we do have lots of easy tools to clear up these solar keratoses. They're pretty easy to fix. And if you can fix them now, it saves you having to see people like me later on. So, if say you're unlucky and you leave them alone, they will progress, and then your chances of actually getting a true skin malignancy rise. Now, skin cancer is like saying fruit. There's just so many. I'm just going to focus on these three because this will occupy by far about 95% of what we deal with. But there's other tumours like Merkel cell carcinoma, atypical fibrous lymphoma. And if you want to talk about those things, come by afterwards and have a chat. But I'm going to focus on BCCs, SCCs, and melanoma. Now, I'm sure, I won't ask you to raise your hands, I'm sure there's a few people here that would have had a BCC by now. And if you haven't personally, you've got a relative that's had a BCC. They would occupy about 75% of the skin cancers I cut out. They look often like this, a little bit curly, quite a smooth surface, very vascular. Can you see those blood vessels? We refer to that to having a vascular appearance. And you can see in itself looks a bit like a mole. You could easily ignore it, and often we do. But they do progress, and they start often ulcerating in the middle. And what people will notice is that it becomes a little bit tender. You know, they come out of the shower, they dry themselves, and they think, actually, there's a little bit of blood on my finger. Where do I see them? Ears, tops of ears, again, chests, more so on women, upper back, backs of hands, the sun-exposed areas. These are almost exclusively due to the sun. Very rarely will I see them on a thigh, or on a foot, or under a toenail. Very exceedingly rare. It's the sun-exposed areas. So basal cell carcinomas, you're going to see one, and you're probably going to get one at some point. I'm probably going to get one. That's how common they are. So that's what you look out for. I guess what's important to point out is that it's probably a good one to have. These do not metastasize. So say, I don't know, you want to be reckless, and you just want to live life and let it go. It will not spread to your lymph nodes. It'll get bigger and bigger. It'll start rotting away. These are called rodent ulcers because they sort of look like you're being eaten at. And it'll eventually go into deeper tissues like your muscle, your fascia, into bone. Really rare to see that these days because most people get them cut out. But they are good in that they don't metastasize, meaning that they don't go to your lymph nodes. To the next one, squamous cell carcinoma. This is the second most common skin cancer in Australia. Very much still related to some. There's a few other things like the wart virus and so on that are involved in this cancer. What makes these a little bit different clinically, how they look in appearance, is you can see on the surface, it's very what we call hyperkeratotic. A bit scaly, a bit rough, a bit horny, so to speak. That's kind of a classic feature of a squamous cell carcinoma. These do metastasize. So when we have these tumours, or we have something that looks a bit like that, I probably should really act on this because I don't really want to have lymph nodes involved. Because when you have lymph nodes involved, it's a completely different ballgame. All right, melanoma. Now this is the one you obviously hear a lot about on television because it gets a lot of press, and that's because it's vicious. It's vicious, it wants to kill you really. And I often tell people that cancer is a little bit like children in the sense that there's so many different behaviours. You know, you guys that kid that's in the corner and reads. You know, some cancers are like that. The first one I showed you, BCCs, they're very slow, they're very lazy tumours. And I guess the antithesis or the opposite to that is melanoma, where it's just violent, it wants to make a mess. And that's why you're so attentive to them, because you've got so much more to lose with them. So I guess, you know, how do you find melanomas? You know, a huge proportion of melanomas are actually found by you. You know, depending on the data you see, 60 to 70% of melanomas are actually brought to our attention by us, in a patient. So I think you do need to keep an eye on your skin and keep an eye on the skin of those that you love. Quite, you know, obviously normal moles. They look normal in the sense that they're symmetrical, the colour is pretty uniform, they're not changing, they're kind of, you know, boring, so to speak. Melanoma is obviously very different to that, and I'll move to the next picture. We have this very basic way of, identifying melanoma. We use dermatologists, they call it more complicated, but I don't need to. You can keep it simple like this, the ABCD method. Asymmetry, so is it symmetrical? Clearly one on the left is not. The borders, are they irregular? Is it a nice smooth ring? And you can get the impression that it's kind of a little bit indented, a bit coliform. Colour, variations in colour, and diameter size. So sometimes growing, being larger, than things act on. But you know, this is pretty easy and intuitive, but sometimes you just get used to seeing your moles and you forget to look out for these things, and don't get complacent, be careful. The reason, you know, be careful is that it's amazing how quickly things can change. This is a chap I saw not that long ago. This all started off with a mole on the side of his face. And you know, you can kick the can down the road, we're all busy. You guys are extremely busy with life. And there's all these competing issues. But before you know it, it's taken root, and this is not something that can be cut out. It can't be irradiated. There's very few options for this, and obviously, I guess you can guess where he ended up, poor guy. But this is a lesson to all of us, me included. You say, catch things on it early, catch things on it early. Now, not everything is melanoma. You know, I just want to point out a couple of things that are really common, but sometimes, you know, invoke a lot of anxiety. So, seborrheic keratoses, I'm sure most of you have got some. If you don't, your mum does, or your dad does. These are those little warty spots on people's back. Some people have a lot of them, like this person here on the right. But they have a very warty appearance, as you can see up there on the top left. Often a lot on the face. They have no cancerous potential. Often create a lot of alarm. They can be a bit itchy, a bit inflamed sometimes, but they have no cancerous potential, so don't worry about those. So moving along quickly, because the night is going fast. Treatment. You know, the surgery gets a bit tiresome for people. You know, if I was a patient, I wouldn't want to get things cut all the time. And for a long time, surgery is all we had. But things are changing quite nicely. Chemotherapy creams, they've been around for a while, but they're getting better and better. So we can use these creams to treat cancers that are superficial, that is on the surface, and there's a whole series of them. Nice to use, not painful, work usually very well. Radiotherapy, you know, evokes a lot of bad thoughts, you know. I'm sure everyone's got a lot of, you know, have relatives that have radiotherapy, it hasn't been a nice experience. But radiotherapy has come a long way. It's just so much more sophisticated now. Very tolerable, just a little bit labour intensive. That's a drawback. And you know, I do use a fair bit of radiotherapy, but you need 20 treatments. It's a lot of work. No beautiful scar. Cancer's usually gone, but 20 treatments, that's hard work. So I think for being out here, that would be a great option for you, I would think. A new technology that I'm involved with is brachytherapy, and I should hopefully have it at Flinders Medical Centre fairly soon. So this is a process that will use a radioactive isotope. This is a little picture of it here on the right. It contains rhenium, which releases energy, and we place it on the tumour for about between 2 and 6 minutes. Very short period of time, then we remove it, and then we let it degrade and throw it away. And what happens afterwards is the tumour gets pissed off, obviously something that we're killing with radiation, but it heals up nicely in about 6 weeks. But for a treatment, it takes 6 minutes. It's fantastic. So I think this is definitely something more of the future, and it's fantastic because when I said, do you get things cut out all the time? No. Injection. So for some cancers, such as keratotic cancernomas, SCCs, I inject them with drugs like 5-fluorouracil and methotrexate. Can cause them to resolve very nicely. So again, don't have to always cut it out. I can inject it with some chemotherapy. And immunotherapies, which Alice touched on as well, this is the future for a lot of cancers, where we basically try and induce the immune system, if you like, to kill the tumour itself. Really clever stuff. Not mainstream, still a lot of teething issues, despite what you see on television, because everything on television sounds like it's the cure. Nowhere near that, but yeah, I think the future is very bright, very bright. Okay, so how do I look after myself? That's obviously a rhetorical question. Eat well, which we've heard a lot about from Alice. Nicotinamide. Has anyone here heard about nicotinamide and skin cancer? It's actually worth Googling. There's actually a lot on the internet, and all the data, or major data, comes from Australia, which is fantastic. So we know if you take a version of vitamin B3, which is just a capsule, Blackamore's make it, it's easy as, cheap as. If you take one in the morning and one at night, you reduce your risk of skin cancer, that is BCCs and SCCs, which we've touched on, by 23 to 24%, which is actually a lot of vitamin B. And it's now very mainstream for us to use this for patients that are getting a lot of skin cancer. So if I see someone that's popping up 2 or 3 skin cancers every year, I'll say, you know what, just take some nicotinamide. It's easy, it's well tolerated, every chemist has it. So I do recommend that. I put the picture of Blackmore's there, only because I do think that's the nicest one to have. This tastes a little bit nicer when you swallow it. The bottle will say 500 milligrams a day, or 1 tablet a day. You need to take 2 to have the benefits for skin cancer. And we think it somehow improves the oxidative, or the way you manage oxidative stress, and that through that process reduces your skin cancer risk. So keep that up your sleeve. Or recommend to friends that you know have a lot of skin cancers. Protect your skin, long clothes, proper hat, all this stuff. But I can't overemphasize is that it is a conscious effort, and you need to choose your wardrobe to adapt to this. There's no point having short sleeve dresses and all that kind of stuff if you are an outdoorsy person, or if you go out on picnics a lot. Get some linen shirts, get some stuff that to cover your body more. And one area that gets a lot of skin cancer, more so women than men, is that chest that I alluded to earlier. It's a tricky one because I said female fashion is that's a bit more exposed, but be conscious of that. Wear a shawl, wear something that's a bit high cut on days that you're going to be outside for long periods, Lip balms. Now, we'll talk about sunscreen a little bit more in a second. I'll focus on lip balms. Women are a lot better at this than men, because a lot of lipsticks will have a bit of sunscreen. But if you're not a lipstick wearer, and if you are outside a lot, you should use a lip balm and sunscreen, like a religion. And most of the good brands have them now. Sunsense, a whole bunch of them. Cancer Council lip balms, they're really good. So if you're going to put the balm on anyway, which you should, for good lip health, have one's got a bit of sunscreen, because the bottom of it gets so much sun. The skin there is really thin, so you just can't put as much sun in the back of your hand can. The skin's much thinner, so do use a good lip balm, have it in your purse, have it in place so you can access it. Take photos. We've all got cameras on our phone, and I know it seems pretty simple, but people still do it. If there's something that's odd on your skin tone, that's odd on your scalp, get your hairdresser to take a photo of it. You take a photo of it. Compare it in 6 weeks, because if you try and align your memory, you won't know, you won't remember. And if photos helps you, okay, this is resolved, or you know what, this is actually double the size now. Get it seen to. So don't rely on memory, use photos. See your GP, as Alex mentioned earlier. The GPs are the kingpin in skin cancer care. Your family GP is who I recommend. There are some good skin cancer buses, as I saw one earlier today. Great place. The Lions one's a great place. But I'll be honest, there are a few skin cancer clinics popping up around that are a little bit hit and miss. There's some great skin cancer GPs, but there are some that are a little bit entrepreneurial. I think stick with your family GP. They're the ones that know where most of the time they can help you with what you need anyway, and then direct you where they think you get the best care. Look after your friends. How many times has it been that it's not until someone's bugged you enough that you've actually got something dealt with? And I think you've got that role, to say, your friends at tennis, your friends at wherever, friends here, what that spot on your nose is definitely changing. Get it checked, Or that spot in the back of your head. So I think you've got a real important role caring for your friends and your family. The sunscreen really quickly as we wrap up. So, how many people say to me, oh, you know what, I don't really use much sunscreen because I tan pretty well, My grandparents were, Dutch or whatever, Portuguese, I tan really well. A tan is like using sunscreen that's SPF 2. Really, it's pointless. So it helps you a little bit, I've got to grant you that. But don't rely on your tan and how dark you think you are. You've still got to use sunscreen. The reason I really got this slide as well, though, is to illustrate, when you're buying a sunscreen, buy 30 plus or greater. Don't waste your money on 15 plus. And you can see that 15 plus protects you from 93% of the rays, but if you're going to spend your money on sunscreen anyway, why not get 30 plus where you get 97 protection? And you can see the difference between 30 and 50 is about 1%, so I'm not too fussed if it's a 30 or 50, but don't get a 15. A lot of the fancy European brands are still 15, great for France, but it's useless for Melbourne, it's useless for Melbourne. The other thing I want to point out to you is that sunscreen is not stable. If you have it in a hot car, who has a sunscreen in the car? Yeah, it's dead. It's dead. You can chuck it in the bin. It's dead. Anything above 30 degrees, it degrades. And how many times have you thought, I'll put sunscreen on today, but I got burnt like I got roasted. It's right because you did put sunscreen on, but it was inactive. It was being cooked in the car. So I would suggest if it's been in the car for a while, throw it away. Get yourself a new one. And I like to tell my patients, get small tubes, small containers, not so you quickly move faster. But have it, in your sports bag, gym bag, whatever, but not in your car. All right. Also, if it's out of date, it's dead as well. Like moisturiser, you can stretch it out a year. Sunscreen, chuck it. A lot of people ask me what sunscreen to get, and truthfully, I don't know what you use. I think if it's a brand you've heard of and you like it, you use it. I'm happy with that. Now, if someone's giving you something they found at the market, no, don't use it. And you have to make sure you've heard of it. Unfortunately, it's not a really regulated industry, so stick with brands you trust. These two brands are probably the ones I use the most. Doesn't mean you have to, but these are the ones I use the most. only because they're very usable. I grew up in the country as well, and I hate that thick sunscreen. I do hate it, I'll be honest. So these products, and these are just for your own interest, are really light. So La Roche-Posay produce their invisible fluid. Kind of quite clearly, but it's their invisible fluid, and it drips out really nicely. So it's like a liquid. So it's really great for daily use. I mean, if you go to the beach for 16 hours, that's not the product for you. For everyday use, that's the one that I commonly use. Avene, another French company, produce a aqua fluid, which is the one in the middle, and they have an emulsion on the left there. I prefer the emulsion, again, because it's very light, it drips. It's really, really tolerable. The aqua fluid is a little bit more viscousy, it's still very light, very nice. So they're the ones I tend to recommend to my female patients. Any patient, I think for women especially, because they sometimes put makeup on top of it or other things. Put your sunscreen on your chest, please. I think a lot of people are very good at doing their face. If you have your hair down, you probably don't need to do your ears, but if you pull your hair back, do your ears, but don't forget your chest. And how many women you see that have quite a youthful face, but their chest is really photo-aged. And that's because they just didn't get having a pretty in their chest. I'm going to tell you a cruel fact. This is a bit awful, I should tell you this. It's sobering for me as well, and for men. But in Australia, we look between 10 and 15 years older than our American and British counterparts. It's pretty awful when you think about it. So, but it comes down to sunscreen use really, and to sun exposure. That's really what it is. So, you've got to live life, you've got to get out. Look, I'll be honest, you can get burned occasionally, but keep it to a minimum and get good habits in place. Not just in summer periods, I'll tell you, I put sunscreen on during summer but not during winter. Nah. I mean, I tell my patients, put on sunscreen on your face like religion. Because the face gets all year. Our arms and our legs will cover up during winter and so on, but our face gets exposed. And for a lot of you people here that drive huge distances, unless you drive a very expensive Range Rover, the windscreens aren't filtered that much. So you get so much sun on your face, and UV damage on your face. So I'd encourage every morning to put on some sunscreen. And that's why I find that it's usable, because it's usable, you'll use it. And this is all in all an effort not to for the sake of doing it. It really is to avoid stuff like this. This is a person that I saw only a few days ago that had a crusty spot, got left alone, got a little bit sore, got left alone, and then it became a squamous cell carcinoma. This is going to need surgery, this is going to need removal of a lot of tissue, a graft, CT scan. So this is stuff you want to avoid. And it happens so commonly. So catch it in a good time. Any questions?
Sunscreen for sensitive skin. Are there certain chemicals in sunscreens that can aggravate sensitive skin?
Oh, totally, as you can have in any product, whether it be a moisturiser and so on. The challenge with sunscreen is there are two components to a sunscreen. There are chemical blockers and there are physical blockers. Now the chemical blockers are the ones that tend to cause allergies. The physical blockers are less likely, like zinc oxide, iron oxide, titanium oxide. So if you have a tendency to have sensitive skin, or you feel like you're having a reaction to a sunscreen, go for ones that have more physical blockers in there, like those metals I mentioned. Yeah, but it really comes down to trial and error for sure, and then you eventually find one that works for you. You can do allergy testing for it, though.
Probably silly.
No.
When we take our kids to the pool, we reapply the sunscreen after a certain period of time. When we put our makeup on in the morning, we put our sunscreen on, and we go through the day, and I don't reapply. And I'm driving home in peak hour heat as well. So, what's your opinion about that?
My opinion is you don't do your best. Let's be real. You're busy mum. It's hard to reapply. I think if you can at least start off the day with a good sunscreen, have makeup that has sunscreen in it, you've blocked out more than other people have, and so you're already ahead of the game. Obviously, if you know that day you're going to be at sports day, or you're going to be on the farm, or you're going to probably think about reapplying for sure. But for most days, I think I'll be very happy with you if you've got someone in the morning and just do that consistently. Consistency is so important. How many people, they have this run of using sunscreen, and nothing for 2 weeks, the sunscreen again. Now, it's a bit of fun. Have a routine that works. It may not be the best routine, so to speak, but do it every day, and in 10 years' time, you'll save yourself so much UV damage.
What about vitamin D? Like we need vitamin D as well.
Yeah.
Does putting sunscreen on every day affect vitamin D?
Definitely does. It does. But it's like a bit like everything. If you got to balance. I don't think you need to hide from the sun. But for someone that's of a fair complexion like yourself, you don't need as much sunlight as you think you do to get vitamin D. And again, as I said, I think look after this real estate. This is the hardest place for me to cut cancer from. And that's the place you don't want me to cut cancer from if you can avoid it. So I'm a little bit less fussy about arms, off the record, I'm a little bit less fussy about arms. If you can protect this, you're ahead of many people. But no, it is a balancing act for sure.
Yeah, I've got one. Oh, sorry.
When you talk about vitamin D, you help the first 2 types. Does it help with melanomas as well?
No.
How effective is spray-on sunscreen?
Do you know, they're not as good. And it comes down to how they're applied. When you use a spray-on, and I do use a spray-on actually sometimes, because it's quick, it's easy, but it's better than nothing. That's how I always think of it as well. When you spray it on, you really should rub it in. Obviously, a lot of people doing is literally just spraying it on, and that's it, like it's a spray tan. But you do the spray and then you rub it on.
What's the rule of thumb on a sunscreen in the workplace? Is it up to the company that's employing the employer or the employee to provide it?
It's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that from a medical legal or from a legal perspective, but I would say that most companies these days do provide it. I wouldn't know a company that doesn't these days. I'm not a legal expert on that matter. I'm sure there's some law on it, but most organisations I'm aware of do provide her stuff. Because really it's a form of PPE. It's like wearing a mask or having ear protection. So that's a good point. Any other questions?
If you've got a sunscreen with one SPF and then makeup with a different level of SPF, does it matter what order you do it in?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, but I would always put your sunscreen on first before you put your makeup on. Yeah. Good, I'm glad you have those SPF in it. And in fact, makeup is very good for sun protection. So if you want a justification for using makeup, it does definitely protect your skin from skin cancer. So I see women all the time that say, I've been using makeup since I was 21, and I can tell that I remove the makeup and their skin is beautiful. Yeah.
What age do you suggest people start screening from?
A bit like what Alice said about bowel cancer, it's very much on the individual. I do think that sometimes there's an unnecessary fear of skin cancer, and a lot of young people that are worried about skin checks, perhaps too frequently. Yeah. If there's a first-degree relative of yours that's had melanoma, as a general rule, you probably start getting skin checks 5 years before the age that first-degree relative had melanoma. But often I'll see a patient and I guess risk stratify them, and they're looking great. I'll say to them, see me in 5 years, see me in 10 years. A young person like yourself would not routinely need a skin check each year. You wouldn't need to.
What age would you suggest they start having?
I think a good place to get a baseline check, provided there's no other risk factors, is 40. I think when you turn 40, so we have to get a baseline skin check, see where you're at. And frankly, if I see nothing until it's 40, I'll probably say them see when they're 50. But if they've not had a melanoma at about 41, they've got already lots of sun damage at 40, you think, okay, this person, woman or man, is going to have a bit of a trajectory of a lot of health issues, skin health issues. I'd see them more often. Was another question on this side?
Yeah, you just touched on it a little bit, but I was just wondering, is skin cancer a hereditary
Totally.
cancer as such?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
There are some people that have certain genetic disorders, so they get a lot of skin cancer. Like I've got numerous women that I see that have like a BCC, this is in their 20s. I cut out BCC from them every 3 or 4 months. They have a very strong genetic weakness for this. But definitely, if your mum and dad's had a lot of skin cancers, you're going to follow similarly. Yeah. And I think that's worthy of note because it's, you think, okay, I'm going to take that change how I care for myself in that area. And you do see that just anecdotally, I see people that have abused their skin. So like people that smoke, you see people smoking in their 90s, you think, how did you get to 90s smoking? And you have this like darling of a person that dies at 41 from lung cancer because they smoked since 16, you know what I mean? There's a clear genetic variation there. And same with skin cancer, I see people that have abused themselves, and you think, gee, not that bad. And others that worked in an office, worked at the school, cutting skin cancer from every 6 months. So the genetics does play a fair bit into it, yeah.
And also, is it being hereditary, is it more male or female, or doesn't matter?
I wouldn't have thought it mattered. I can't answer one specific though. I don't think it would matter, to be honest. I can't say whether it would be a gender variant. Yeah, but it's a good call. Okay. Someone else? Yeah.
Is there any way that you're aware of blurry lights in an office to melanoma or skin cancer?
Yeah, no, there is a little bit of ultraviolet. Now, the majority of light it's a very broad spectrum. You've got ultraviolet A, B, C, visible light, infrared, and so on. So the light that causes skin cancer is actually invisible. Like you can't actually see UVA and UVB. That's the stuff that causes skin cancer. What you see is UVC and a bit of invisible light. But there is a little bit of UV that comes from fluorescent lights, but not something that would be significant enough to cause skin cancer. There's a lot of fear as well about screens, from the CRT screens. Probably relevant for CRT, but not really relevant to LEDs and modern screens. Is there someone else? No? Well, thank you for having me. It's been a delight. Basically, Dr. Is there someone from Jamestown? Yeah, I used to be the doctor there like a decade ago. Things have changed a lot around here. Melrose was a lot more quieter, but thank you very much.
Thank you. I've said this a few times, it's so lovely and we're very privileged to have such expertise here in Melrose. And I thank you once again. Another wonderful talk. And I still learned a lot the second time round with all these wonderful questions as well. You've got a lot of people talking. So thank you very much once again.
Pleasure.
Give another round of applause.